Thank you for coming out today, or for logging on, whichever you're doing. This is our final Lunch and Learn for 2024. I want to thank Professor Chris Judge for putting together such a great lineup. If you get our newsletter, or if you log on to our website, you'll see some highlights for 2025. Is that our next year? Yeah, 2025. He has some great programs coming up. So we hope to see you all back here or online in January. But today we are delighted to have a colleague of ours talking about a holiday appropriate topic, one that I'm particularly excited about as a folklorist. So our speaker today is my colleague and our Native American Studies Center colleague, Professor Claudia Heinemann-Priest. Claudia was born in Ontario, Canada, and she grew up in Canada, Germany, Spain, and France. She went to school in Canada, Germany, and Spain, and graduated from Waterloo Collegiate Institute in Canada. She earned a BA from the University of Waterloo, Canada, her MLA from Winthrop University, and her MA in Linguistics from the University of South Carolina. She is currently pursuing a PhD in Comparative Literature at USC. She learned German as her first language, French and English by the time she was 3. She learned Spanish while she was going to school in Spain. When she was 9, she took Russian in university and started to learn Greek and Irish Gaelic on her own. She has been working on the Catawba language since 1995. Languages have always been a part of her life. Claudia Heinemann-Priest taught German in her Saturday German language school when she was 16 and kept on teaching various subjects, mostly languages and literature, since then. She has taught preschool through college level. She did her first big translation when she was 19 and has not stopped translating since. Claudia was the linguist for the Catawba Cultural Preservation Project from 1995 to 2004. She continued collaborating with the Catawba Indian Nation while teaching at Winthrop University, Chester Middle School, and York Comprehensive High School. She completed a teaching English to speakers of other languages in 2006. She teaches full-time at USC Lancaster, and she has since 2007, and has been at the growing Native American Studies Center since 2012 when we all moved in here. She is a Safe Zone ally, access opportunity engagement advocate, and co-advisor for PRISM, the USCL LGBTQIA+ student organization. So please join me in welcoming Claudia Heinemann-Priest.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm going to start my timer so that I don't run over time. Welcome to Krampus & Co. Wanted to start with this Instagram recording of a Campuslauf in Austria. And you can see on the screen, you can see St. Nicholas flanked by 2 angels. And then you can kind of see the little corner here. This is Knecht Ruprecht. And then Krampus, a bunch of Krampuses will come afterwards.
Whoa.
All right, so you can see that it's very popular. My original title was The Bogeyman at Christmas, the background and history of Krampus and Knecht Ruprecht. And I have to learn to stand right here because I like to move around when I'm talking. So let me talk a little bit about the original title as to why I picked it at first and then how I changed it. So the background of history of Krampus, Knecht Ruprecht, and companions of St. Nicholas / Father Christmas. So the bogeyman is often considered a trickster figure in folklore, as he primarily uses fear and deception to frighten children into behaving, often playing pranks or appearing in unsettling ways to punish naughty behavior, rather than directly harming them. This aligns with the classic characteristics of a trickster figure. often anthropomorphic, animal traits, genderless. And the key points about the bogeyman as a trickster is that the bogeyman has a mischievous nature. Like many tricksters, the bogeyman enjoys playing pranks, creating fear through illusions and unsettling appearances rather than outright violence. The bogeyman has unpredictable behavior. The bogeyman's actions can vary depending on the situation, sometimes appearing as a shadowy figure, sometimes as a monstrous creature, adding to the elements of surprise and fear. And the bogeyman is also used as a cautionary tale. The bogeyman is often used by parents to warn children about misbehaving, leveraging the fear of the unknown to encourage good behavior. I'm sure that you are familiar with that. How many of you have had parents that told you, behave or so-and-so is going to get you? Yes? Yes? What was the name of your bogeyman? Do you remember?
The Great Swooper. He would swoop down.
The Great Swooper. Okay. Anyone else?
They just called ours the boogeyman.
Just the boogeyman? The Grinch. So the actual name boogeyman can be related to the Celtic bodach, plural is bodach, old man, rustic, churl, lout. And that character is also a trickster or a bogeyman figure in Gaelic folklore and mythology. So you have pucks, leprechauns, right? You're all familiar with those. And then to kind of go across the board, this is a global phenomenon. There's a bogeyman in every culture. So in Greek myths, you have Hermes, who often plays the trickster. And I'm just going to name a few because I could go down this rabbit hole and I would be here forever. But this is not what this presentation is about. Slavic, you have the trickster, but also the culture hero, and often those are combined. Norse mischief maker Loki, you're all probably familiar with him, who is also a shapeshifter, but also exhibits sex variability and in one story becomes pregnant. There's an African-American folklore, personified rabbit known as Brer Rabbit. That's the main trickster figure. In French folklore, you have Renard the Fox. Also in German, Reineke Fuchs. In Dutch, Renard de Vos. And it's also in Luxembourgian folklore. In Catawba, we also have the little wild people, Yang Hasuri. And they basically serve also as a corrective, corrective characters. There's always more than one. And they basically tell their children not to go off the path in the woods, or else the Yang Hasuri will get them. And that's kind of reminiscent a little bit of Red Riding Hood too, isn't it? With Wolf. In Lakota, you have Iktomi, who can appear as any type of character. A spider, could even be a rock. And then in Americana, we have, you remember the cartoons, the Wile E. Coyote cartoons? The Road Runner is the trickster there, right? Wile E. Coyote is, as Stephen pointed out to me, he's more of the foil. But the coyote is also a trickster figure in certain Native American cultures. And have you heard of Slender Man? Slender Man is a kind of an urban legend. And there was actually a big kerfuffle about it in about 10 years ago, where someone committed murder in the name of Slender Man. So there are lots of different characters that contribute to the bogeyman. All right, so the shadow companions. As is well known, St. Nicholas, the bringer of gifts, only gives gifts to good children. He usually brings a companion with him who helps distribute the gifts and punishes the naughty children. While St. Nicholas distributes the gifts to the children on December the 6th, his companion, Knecht Ruprecht, has a less pleasant task. He is responsible for punishing naughty offspring with his rod. For those children, the bearded assistant, masked with a dark cowl, usually carries a rod, a switch, or a tail with him. Sometimes he also threatens the children to stuff them into his gift bag. In some areas, however, he also appears alone as a bringer of gifts and as a punishing figure at the same time. The sinister companion of St. Nicholas is known by many different names, depending on the region and country. In German-speaking Switzerland, for example, he is known as Schmutzli, in the Rhineland as Hans Muff. These designations probably allude to the somewhat unkempt appearance of the St. Nicholas companion. In the German-speaking world, the most common name today is probably Knecht Ruprecht, which means, Knecht means something like a servant or a farmhand. But here in North America, specifically the US, the Krampus of Alpine tradition has gained a foothold both in films and traditions as well as popular culture. The various form of the dark servant have their origins in the children's horrors of the late Middle Ages. The Krampus run goes back to a 500-year-old tradition from the Alpine region. For the first time in the 16th century, the so-called Klabaus paraded through the streets. Since the 16th century, leaflets with frightening figures have been circulating, which were intended to encourage children to be pious and obedient as frightening educational means of pedagogy. This includes, for example, the child eaters. Behind these gruesome horrors is the superstitious idea that the devil devours the souls of poor sinners. The child eaters appear accompanied by a Butzenbrecht or Butzenbercht and threatens the nasty children with cruel punishments. Like Knecht Ruprecht, both figures, the child eater and the Butzenbercht, carried a large sack or basket in which the disobedient children were abducted. Depending on the region, Knecht Ruprecht, whom you can see in the image right here, okay, takes on a different function and is considered either good or evil. Originally, the Krampus stood for the evil of the world, and that's this figure right here. As early as the 17th century, the figure of Knecht Ruprecht appears in stories. The figure is supposed to embody evil, even be a version of the devil tamed by St. Nicholas, as many Christians believe. Knecht Ruprecht is wrapped in a brown or black cowl and has a long beard like his master. On his belt, he carries a rod or a wooden stick as a symbol of his punitive power. In the wicker basket on his back are linen bags filled with tangerines, nuts, chocolates, and gingerbreads. And that's usually what my parents put out in a holiday plate. For us, big, huge oranges and big apples were very special because we only got those during the holidays. In depictions of the 17th century, however, Knecht Ruprecht threw on a shaggy fur. The horns on his head leave no doubt. They who do not obey are of the devil. With his rod, the Knecht Ruprecht intimidates the naughty children in order to punish them for their behavior and to deny gifts from St. Nicholas. The Krampus tradition also has an element of establishing social order, Botha said. It wasn't until the 17th century that it evolved to become more focused on children. In its earliest incarnation, in pagan societies, if adults were greedy, indecent, or too strict, they were also visited by Krampuses. So it definitely had an underpinning of general social control. And this is Britta Botha, associate professor of German at the USC. That's not our USC, that's the University of Southern California. The Krampus is a devilish fellow, a mystical animal figure that also spreads fear and terror in the Pachten runs around winter solstice. In any case, in terms of appearance and character, there are striking parallels between the Krampus and the Buttenmandel in the Berchtesgadener Land. In the Alemannic area, there's a similar custom, but with different figures, Klausentreiben. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about a lot of these here. Okay, so a lot of the images you saw also are little postcards that children would get. So it's Gruß vom Krampus means greetings from the Krampus. And sometimes it's Gruß vom Krampus and St. Nicholas, right? So this one here shows, you know, greetings from both. So there's the good and the evil, right? So if you're a good little boy or girl or child, then you get your gifts. And if you're a bad child, then you get the Rute, which is the rod, right? I'm going to read something in German and I'm going to translate for you. Knecht Ruprecht heißt es auf eine allerhand Art hässliche, maskierte und vermummte Person, wodurch die Weiber und Muhmen die kleinen Kinder zu fürchten machen. Knecht Ruprecht means a person masked and hooded in all sorts of ugly ways, whereby the women and mothers make the little children fearful. And this is from a useful, gallant, and curious women's lexicon from 1715 from Leipzig. And the author of that was Gottlieb Sigmund Corvinus. St. Nicholas, a kind, mildly smiling man with a long white beard, brings gifts, and his uncouth, rabid assistants, they are responsible for the rough stuff. In screaming contrast to their boss, Krampus and his congenial partner, Knecht Ruprecht, are not sympathetic figures. And yet they are an integral part of Advent customs throughout Eastern Alpine region, but also in many Northern and Eastern European countries. They rattle the iron chains, they ring the cowbells, and they let the rods speak. Krampus, Knecht, and co. spread a fear of the devil in a conspicuous discrepancy to the holy bishop from the East, right? Because St. Nicholas of Myra. This is the function of the diabolical duo from pagan mythology. Both are frightening figures who are up to mischief under the eyes of St. Nicholas, the devilish counterparts of the man of God, the eternal contrast of light and dark. And yet there are differences. Knecht Ruprecht appears as a soloist, the Krampus in a group. So clothes make the Krampus. Clothes make the Krampus. The only thing I don't have is sheepskin with me. And this is what the hellish dress code looks like. Its coat is made of sheepskin or goat skin. In some parts of Lower Bavaria, there are also the so-called Fellkrampusse, who do not wear a mask, but only fur and horns. In other areas, the wooden mask, the larva, is mandatory. The face mask is carved, hand-carved, I might say, from pine or lime wood and decorated with billy goat, ibex, or ram horns. Again, these are real. Of course, in modern Krampuses nowadays also wear aluminum, plastic, or rubber masks with their fur costume. The accessory of a Krampus includes loudly clanging cowbells, which either hang from the belt or are hung in the form of a bell belt. Other indispensable utensils are a chain for rattling, a horse's or cow's tail, a willow rod, and a bag or basket to carry away the bad children. Over the years, the reputation of the evil servant Ruprecht changed more and more. Today, it has partly lost all its significance or appears in a positive function. He is no longer seen as a child's terror. Nowadays, the children's terror is viewed rather critically and is therefore more and more banished from the customs of dropping in. So they would actually go from house to house and drop in, kind of like the American Santa Claus does down the chimney, only this happened December 6th, or the night of December 5th to the 6th. In Austria, to a lesser extent Bavaria, however, a veritable cult has developed around the Krampus figure. Paradoxically, however, it is also so popular that it is even being newly introduced in some places. In the rest of Austria, and sometimes also in Bavaria, Krampus parades are organized. During these parades, women and men dress as Krampuses and similar figures, parade noisily through the streets, for example, with bells ringing. They're not only popular with locals, but also attract masses of tourists. The origin of this custom is disputed. However, it is suspected that it has a pre-Christian origin in the wild hunt during the 12 nights around winter solstice. So let's look at some of the regions. In Germany, everybody knows St. Nicholas and his servant Ruprecht. While the holy and merciful St. Nicholas distributes gifts, it is the task of his companion to punish the naughty children. This is also the task of Krampus, who, unlike Knecht Ruprecht, appears much more spiteful. So you see both of the examples here. This one here, I hope you see my pointer. This one here is the Knecht Ruprecht, and then over here you can see the Krampus with his horns. Okay, this is a very old depiction from 1896. So as a diabolical counterpart to St. Nicholas, and I'm going to say it because it's genderless. Krampus is genderless, okay? Punishes the children who do not behave. If they were particularly angry, it puts them in a vessel, also called Bütte. Where does it come from? Well, it's best known in the Eastern Alpine region. This figure is often referred to as Kamper or Bartel. Dates back to pre-Christian times, somewhere in the Alpine region. In southern Bavaria, the Upper Palatinate, as well as in Austria, Liechtenstein, also Hungary, Slovenia, the Czech Republic, and even northern Italy in some region, Krampus is known. So there's actually a fairly, but it's all the Alpine region, yes? So what is the Alpine region? There you have it. Okay, so you can see, I can't point it out here. So this here is the southern part of Germany, right? Bavaria. And you have the Swiss Alps here. You have the Austrian Alps here. You have the Italian Alps, the Julian Alps, and the French Alps. So this whole region here, crossing across these 5 countries, had a Krampus type of figure. And as always, I love maps. So you're going to see lots of maps now. All right, so let's go to Bavarian and Austrian names. Krampel, Bartel, that's Southeast Austria, or Klabauf, that's Bavaria and Austria. The Krampus often teams up with St. Nicholas and goes from house to house with him around the days around December 6th. However, St. Nicholas entourage can also include several Krampuses. The name is probably derived from the Bavarian Austrian word Krampen, which means a curved spike, claw, or pickaxe. This becomes understandable once you had the pleasure of meeting a Krampus. Visually, he differs greatly from the German Knecht Ruprecht. He was usually depicted with cloven hooves, the horns of a goat. He had a long red tongue, wore chains in which he rattled to warn the children or frighten them. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Yes? Okay. It was not very different from the way the devil was portrayed in medieval morality and mystery plays. And a group of St. Nicholas, Krampus, and other companions is known in Bavaria dialects as Bas or Pass. All right, now to the more scary part. A particularly nasty specimen of the Krampus is the Klaubauf in Austria. On the evening of December 5th, men dressed up as Kleibeife, which is the plural dialect, parade through the streets in groups and try to throw innocent bypassers to the ground. The custom of the so-called Klaubaufengehen has a long tradition, especially in East Tyrol and especially Mattei. As far as the origins of this strange name is concerned, one can only make assumptions. It may be related to the verb aufklauben. That's where you switch it around, Klaubauf. Others think that he can be traced to the Gothic Klaupen, which means jumping, dancing, running away. Others still derive it from the Middle High German Klauba, which is a claw or talon. This custom is also falling into disrepute during the various incidents in which passersby or Kleibeife themselves were injured. So it kind of gained a bit of notoriety. So we're just talking about Tyrol. So you can see it's Tyrol is Western Austria and Northern Italy. It actually used to be a country, but of course, you know, history and politics happen. So it's split up now amongst different countries, but I'm not going into that whole history. But that is the region of Tyrol. Incidentally, the backgrounds that you see, those are modified images of regions in the Alpine. All right. So in Tyrol, you had Teufel, Gankel, Teuftratzen. So in the Eitzach Valley legend of the Krampus, in times gone by, the Krampus, who is supposed to symbolize the devil, was not to be trifled with. A farmer's wife in Fitch had a wayward boy. In her opinion, a visit from the Krampus could not hurt him. Therefore, she agreed with her servant that he would come into the house dressed as a Krampus. She would give him the naughty boy. That would be a good lesson for him. It didn't take too long. The dark figure rattled on the room door. He demanded the bad boy, whom the farmer's wife handed over to him, as agreed. Scarcely had the infernal gone with the villain when another Krampus appeared and asked for the child. It was the disguised servant. Then it became clear to the two of them that the boy had been entrusted to the real devil who had come first. The boy child never reappeared. And this is from a reference of the Einsacker-Thaler Sagen from 1957. All right, so a quick trek to Switzerland. In Switzerland, the Schmutzi is the companion of Santa Claus, i.e. St. Nicholas, and he helps with the preparation for St. Nicholas Day. I didn't go into any more detail of the Schmutzli because it's very similar to Knecht Ruprecht. So with his dark robes and long dark beard, he looks like the gloomy antagonist. That's still the Schmutzli. The Schmutzli was was kind of the friendlier version of Pachten. Presumably, the various regional St. Nicholas companions go back to the Alpine Pachten and have mixed up with them over time. However, the figure of Krampus is even dedicated to its own day, December 5th, which in turn is celebrated with various customs. Strictly speaking, Knecht Ruprecht and Krampus are not the same figure. At least their appearance and customs associated with them have differences. However, they probably have a common origin and fulfill a similar function. Knecht Ruprecht, so this Belznickel, or simply Teufel, which means devil, named monsters etymologically derived from Ruprecht, the coarse pacht. The etymology of the word pacht is uncertain, but it may come from the Old High German beracht or berecht, which means the bright one or the bear. It may also come from the Old High German verb pergan, which means hidden or covered. So there was actually a Pächter or Frau Pächter. So in German, it's called Pacht or Bacht, and other variations, was once known as a goddess in Alpine paganism in the Upper German and also Austrian and Slovenian regions of the Alps. Today, Frau Pächter is often depicted as the Christmas witch, or even less accurately as the female Krampus. Both descriptions fail to acknowledge her full expression, as she is a goddess and an archetype of the wise woman found in almost universally in pagan traditions. She is thought to have originated from the Germanic goddess Frigg, and is similar to the Middle German figure Frau Holle. Frau Holle was a character that would also mete out justice, so good or bad, and girls would go to her and they would learn household things. So it was also a kind of, this is how good girls behave. And they were tasked with shaking out the feather blankets, right? And that's why it would snow on Earth. So I wanted to then go and show a little bit about the Pacht. So you see there, St. Nicholas. This is a home video, by the way. So there's an example of a Pacht or a Krampus or whatever you want to call him. But in a minute, you'll also see examples of the Claudia right here. And this is probably like a cleaned up version of it. So there's the child that they're supposed to be correcting. And there's another example of St. Nicholas, but this St. Nicholas is wearing a mask, a funny mask of sorts. And there's the example of Krampus. I mean, I don't know, if I were a little child, I think I'd be afraid of St. Nicholas too. So you can see there's different variations on how people dress and what people put together. A lot of homemade costumes. That's just a little example from a home video on the Krampus. So let's go to Northern Germany. Even among the Ruprecht variants known in Germany, they are hairy, not only bearded figures. The Ruklas, rough, shaggy, or hairy St. Nicholas, who wreaked havoc in today's Mecklenburg, Western Pomerania region, has a certain resemblance to the Krampus despite the spatial distance. In the Saarland, or Saar-Palatinate, as we say in English, which borders with France on the south, France on the south, the name Pelznickel has established itself. Pelz means fur, nickel means mischievous child. The name nickel in English for the 5-cent piece, by the way, comes from the Kupfernickel, which was a copper nickel at the time. So there's a connection there. Compared to the Krampus, the Pelznickel had a name mainly used in the Palatinate, seems almost tame. This combines characteristics of St. Nicholas and the Ruprecht figures. The name also suggests this. Nickel is a short form of Nicholas. Okay, so you have the kind of this overlap between terminologies, right? The first part, Pelz, alludes to the children's fright. However, it's not clear whether it refers to the thick fur coat of the Pelznickel typically wears, or whether it derives from the verb pelzen, to beat through. The Pelznickel has also made a name for itself internationally through German immigrants who apparently did not want to miss it in their new homeland. For example, the Pelznickel can be found in various spellings and pronunciations in individual places in Russia, Brazil, Pennsylvania, Nova Scotia, in the Brazilian Valle do, and I don't speak Brazilian, Itajaí in the state of Santa Catarina. He is also known as Papai Noel do Mato, Santa Claus of the Forest, and accompanies both St. Nicholas on December 6th and Santa Claus on December 24th. In Nova Scotia, Canada, there is even a similar custom to the Klausentreiben, which is called Belznickeling there. In Franconia, the Pelzmärtel not only brings the rod, but also nuts and fruits for the good children. Visually, he's reminiscent of St. Nicholas with his red and white robe. There's a Martin in Pelzmärtel. Märtel is the Franconian word for it. And since the 17th century, he has also come to the children on St. Martin's Day. That means November 11th. A Pelzmärtel poem says, "It is getting dark in the streets. Lamps are burning in the streets. Children are running and they are laughing and they are screaming, 'Hoo, there's the Pelzmärtel. Catch us, Märtel. Look, here we are. Catch us, catch us.'" After the Reformation, the Pelzmärtel developed into an alternative to the Catholic St. Nicholas in some Protestant communities in Franconia. Like St. Nicholas, the Pelzmärtel brought children treats and read them the Riot Act. By the way, this is where the Pelz in Pelzmärtel comes from. Pelzen sometimes means something like punishing or beating. So the Pelzmärtel costume included heavy chains and a clattering bell, so that the children would certainly notice his coming. The Pelzmärtel is this gray, old, scruffy creature coming from the forest, would not be conceivable without the gray November weather. There's also an iteration of a type of Krampus figure in the Netherlands. So Black Peter, Zwarte Piet in Dutch, originated in the 15th century. Its dark appearance is said to be reminiscent of a Spaniard, a reflection of the occupation of Netherlands by Spain at the time. Black Peter has also been associated with pirates. Naughty Dutch children were often threatened that he would take them to a pirate hideout and beat them there. For this purpose, he was often depicted with a large stick in his hand. The large sack he held was rumored to be used to stuff children into it for the journey to Spain. At that time, Black Peter was a euphemism for the devil. And it was believed that Saint Nicholas, or Sinterklaas, as a God's representative, had beaten the devil and made him his servant. Thus, Black Peter was given the task of distributing the punishments while Saint Nicholas took care of the most pleasant sides of Christmas. And I don't have an image here because it is a little controversial. There are rumors about how maybe Zwarte Piet was a slave, and there's lots of controversy there. So let me just stay with that. All right, so France. In Alsace, Hans Trapp will come together with St. Nicholas on December 6th. His name originates from the robber knight Hans von Trotha, sorry, who lived in the 15th century. So is actually a person. With his long and shaggy beard and hair, he looks rather grumpy. And then there was also a Père Fouettard that translates as the father with a whip. And that's what they say in France. And depending on the region, he is seen as the evil antithesis to St. Nicholas or as a dear helper. He also comes with a brown robe and a long, dark beard. So why is Krampus enjoying such a renewed appeal, and why are Americans adopting this Alpine tradition? One reason Botha mentions is globalization of traditional festivals. She says, let's not forget it's a two-way street. Halloween never has been a tradition in continental Europe, but now people have started celebrating it there, albeit on a much smaller scale than in the US. Krampus, used for centuries to promote social and parental control, offers a brief window of escape from modern societal constraints. Both suggest this is a large part of the Krampus's modern day appeal. Comparing Krampus festivities to the traditional European carnivals and Halloween, where people have an opportunity to dress up, mask their identities, and run wild. And I quote again, people delight in having a day or an evening spent outside the regular social norms. Dressing up and disguising your appearance represents a kind of freedom, a liberty to do certain things that you wouldn't usually do, especially when you feel safe in the knowledge that no one can recognize you. Compared to the Kleibai parading through the streets in groups and trying to throw innocent bystanders to the ground, of course, things are a little bit more civilized. At the same time, the old custom is gaining more and more popularity, perhaps also thanks to modern fantasy horror adaptations of the character Krampus. Thank you.